What's going on, gamers? We got an interesting article here by Shinobi and a lot of other people. It's coming from Bloomberg. That are basically talking about Bloodborne Remake. Now, there's a lot of always heated debates about this controversy and pointing the fingers without realizing a lot of information we were giving in the past, which is, of course, I want to provide and give some people some more inside intels. Now, I don't know if people remember when Miyazaki had multiple interviews with this game. One of them, he said that when you think about Bloodborne and you think about um, Demon Souls remake, it had two generations, meaning that they didn't try to remake it in the PS4 generation. That if it made any sense, it would make more sense to get it in the PS6 generation, and that it's a special game to him, and he doesn't want it to be done without him. In this article, Bloomberg, it says Bluepoint Games was pitched a remake of Bloodborne last year. Sony said yes. From Software said no. Now, people are going to say it's their fault because they're fired. I wouldn't necessarily say that because Sony still made that decision. I should have put them on a live service game anyways. I should have put them on another remake game. That's what I think because they have a track record of doing that very good. Uh, and, it gets very interesting because I think that when you think about them getting fired, some people could think that this is some type of damage control to get away from Sony. I was like, that's not the case, though. That was the truth. That was the truth. If From Software said no, then what do you want them to do about it? Because Miyazaki already said the game was special to him. We can go right here real quick and look. Hidetaka Miyazaki talks why Bloodborne is special to him and how it led to Elden Ring. Did we see that? A lot of people don't remember some of these interviews. And there's another article about him talking about that it makes sense to wait two generations rather than one because you want to see a bigger impact. Impact does matter. So it's like with the PS6, I'd be able to show a bigger impact from the PS4, not go from PS4 to PS5, and he's absolutely correct. You know what I mean? So we can find something right here where he says, it becomes something much more fluid and active, I think, which was a very defining characteristic of Sekiro, and it's something I've been thinking about since Bloodborne, Miyazaki says. Perhaps in Sekiro, it appears most obviously, or it's the clearest form that I think the philosophy can embody when you're talking about, for Miyazaki, who has directed nearly every game in From Software's Legacy Souls catalog, including Elden Ring, Sekiro, and Bloodborne, the relationship between offense and defense started to get more fully fleshed out. You do the active counter, get back your HP and all that. He's talking about that type of philosophy. He says, and personally, I think there's one more level we can crank it up to and sharpen that and hone in on that mechanic and even more. But I think Sekiro was a big turning point when talking about that type of mechanic. When I mentioned that Bloodborne was the first From Software game that clicked with me, Miyazaki smiles. I'm very glad to hear that, he exclaims. Bloodborne is a special game for me as well. I'm very, very happy to hear you say that. So, and then he's like, I then follow up asking the director why the critically acclaimed title sticks out in the vast pool of his other beloved creations. A couple of reasons, he begins. The first one being, it was probably one of the most challenging development cycles we've had from a studio perspective. The second, perhaps the bigger element, is how personal it was for me in the sense that I imparted a lot of my own ideas into this game. Whether it be story, the world building component, or even the game mechanics and game systems that are in place. It is perhaps the strongest reflection of my type of flavoring of a game no one can experience. So if we're looking at that and looking at this, that means that when you think about Demon Souls, when you think about Dark Souls, Bloodborne to him is the most personal, emotional experience. And I don't think he's going to just hand that off as a remake. I think that if there's going to be a remake, he wants to remake it the way he wants to in his image. In a sense of they may do something with the challenge because a lot of people complain about that. I got the platinum in that game. I'll be like 5 times. And they may want to add more covenants. He doesn't want it to just be a one-to-one remake. He probably is going to want that remake to be better than the original. So he has to get involved in that because he's developing that and designing that and directing that. Bluepoint are remake studios, you know what I mean? So in that sense, that makes sense. We're going to get to this article in a second and figure out what they have to say. And we can go back to that. Going over to Push Square, like I said, pitched to Sony and the numbers made sense. A remake of the PS4 classic Bloodborne was pitched to Sony by the now shuttered studio Bluepoint Games. And it was actually accepted because the numbers made sense. A new Bloomberg report has revealed. Now, I remember Detective C's actually saying something about that, but people were trying to shoot that down. Looks like he was right, and some people owe him an apology. However, the remake never entered production because From Software, the original developer on PS4, didn't want it to happen. That was sometimes that probably Sony felt the same way, right? And then I'm telling you, there's another article with Miyazaki saying he wants to wait 2 generations rather than 1. Sony holds the rights to Bloodborne, but it was from software that made it in collaboration with the platform holder. So they have a relationship they want to keep healthy. I don't blame them, of course. Apparently, the idea of a Bloodborne remake from Bluepoint Games was pitched by the studio multiple times, and the idea had been strongly considered at one point was even expected within Bluepoint, but never entered production. And it sucks that didn't happen. I know some people probably just wanted a next-gen looking one, but I would rather wait for Miyazaki to get involved, because there's plenty of games anyways, and be able to get that full-blown next-gen with, amazing integrations in there and stuff that Bluepoint would not be able to do because they don't develop the series from scratch like that. They do. Why would I not want him involved in that? I do. But he's busy, and he's got his Duskblood and all that other stuff. But guess what? By the time it gets to that, it's going to be PS6 era. So that's what he wanted anyways. Also in the report, it's revealed Bluepoint Games also pitched an update version of its Shadow Colossus remake it did on PS4, but Sony turned it down. So they got turned down by multiple single-player remakes, which they should be on. Bloodborne I can understand because they said no. Shadow Colossus, they should let them do that. Bluepoint Games then pitched to other PlayStation studios on developing new projects and other franchises, such as a spin-off of Ghost of Tsushima, but nothing was greenlit. So they had a chance to make other single-player games. I don't know why they didn't say Killzone or something. It's now public knowledge that Bluepoint Games spent years working on a live service God of War game, lol, which was ultimately canceled in early 2025. Bloomberg reports that the idea behind this project was that Atreus had fallen into Hades. There's nothing wrong with that. So going down to some of these comments, you got Miyazaki saw how they butchered the Demon Souls. It was like, hell no, you ain't touching Bloodborne. I don't know about them butchering it. A letter says, yeah, blame the most beloved developer of this gen from software. It's not that, I don't think. Demon Souls remake is stunning. Say what? Yeah, no, they did a really good job with it. I don't know why they're saying that. But how? Sony owns the IP. They can do whatever they want. I mean, you could say that, but when you're one with the developer, and if you want to continue to make something else, why would you do that? They have a close relationship. You're not going to just do that and ignore their demands. You know what I mean? It doesn't work like that. You still have to sync with the creators. They just have the title sitting there. You can't replace some software. Sony's not going to do that. Then you got another idiot. They saw what they did with the Demon Souls remake and said, no, don't touch our man. What are you talking about? Demon Souls remake was really good. People say stupid stuff. The truth is finally out, LOL. People can start pointing the finger at the right people now. It's not even pointing the finger. It's that they have a right to say no because they want to make it better and more fully fleshed next gen. It's not wrong to say no. Like, Bluepoint is not the developers. It's not their game. Miyazaki takes that game more personal than other games. And so do a lot of other people. So if he says no, he's not wrong because of that. And it's not his fault that Bluepoint got shut down. Sony decided to do that. They should have never put them on a God of War live service game. So we Uno reverse our hate to from software. If you're immature, you're going to do that. Why would you blame from software for another studio getting shut down? That doesn't make any sense. No, they can do whatever they want with their game and decide if they want somebody to not touch it or not. Sony just has the title. Damn, a lot of people owe Herman Host an apology. I don't know about that. I'm not even worried about that. Jason's news sounds like PR control. So you get these people coming in here saying this. There's another interview with this as well, too, with Miyazaki talking about certain things, but it's like, there's other articles saying things differently. And we can look into this. I know for a fact these guys run a Bloodborne PC port, Miyazaki said. This is a Bloodborne PC port. This is not a remake, though. That's different. We're talking about the remake here. Referring to from software producer Yasuhiro Kitao, and interpreter Bobby Simpson seated at the conference table near him. If I say I want one, I'll get in trouble as well, but it's nothing I'm opposed to. That's the PC port. That's kind of like trying to manipulate the scene. It's like, no, that's not what we're talking about here. I thought that would be the end of the topic. Miyazaki went on to elaborate on his answer. Obviously, as one of the creators of Bloodborne, my personal, pure, honest opinion is I love more players to be able to enjoy it. Yeah, that's a port. Especially as a game that is now coming of age. Sony decides that, yeah, because they have the publishing rights. They don't want to put it on there. One of those games of the past that gets lost in older hardware. I think any game like that, it'd be nice to have an opportunity for more players to be able to experience that and relive this relic of the past. So as far as I'm concerned, it's definitely not something I'm opposed to. Yeah, that's what he's talking about. Sony didn't put Demon Souls on there. It's like, okay, yeah, that's Sony's decision. That's different. That's not the same as being able to make a remake, a next-gen remake. But, I mean, if you talk about next-gen, you don't want to do it the next generation. You need to wait two, and that would be better. So we get the idea right here, right? And then we got a little bit of comments down here as well. Well, this news will go down well with everyone, I'm sure. I'm still so angry about the Bluepoint closure. Didn't Detective C's report all this before Jason? Yeah, he did, actually. This sounds like one of those pieces of news that's probably missing a lot of vital information and background, but will cause mass outrage regardless. Yeah, if people are heartless, mindless, immature, imbecile, sure. From Software is still mad that Demon's Souls Remake looked and ran better than all their games. I remember they were so upset about it. Dude, they have better technology. What do you mean? Of course it's supposed to look that good. But that's the visuals. They still created that game. Like, I don't agree with that. I don't think that makes any sense. But we get the idea of looking over this. And if we want to go down here even more, we can look up a couple things. Miyazaki's influence is undeniable in the entire From Software catalog, which can likely be attributed to the fact that he has been heavily involved in the stage and level design from Demon's Souls all the way up to Elden Ring. My approach of making games as the game director is like sandwiching from a very high conceptual level and painting the final image of what we're trying to achieve, as well as going really granular on some of the detail elements of what the players experience, he says. He says, by sandwiching the game development process, the middle almost has only one place to go, which is completing that whole experience. Of course, the high-level conceptual stuff might be easy to imagine, but of the details that I pick and choose to oversee myself, the level design is one of them, because I think that experience really creates and raises the floor of what players are going to feel and experience through the game design. Yeah, his level design is amazing. From Software, they do a very good job. This is true with Elden Ring and true with Dark Souls as well. I'll look at what's being done and say, all right, this, and this I'm going to oversee, because I know which points in that experience are going to be the most effective and sandwich the high-level vision plus the details players want to see. The influence and approach carried into Elden Ring, the latest critically acclaimed From Software title in the Souls-like subgenre. In the case of Elden Ring, there was very high-level conceptual vision. And then there was the details, Miyazaki says. The defining details for me throughout the game was artwork, the level design, the animation, as well as the text that you see on screen. I think that was the strongest supporting factor that helped elevate the entire experience for players. And because Elden Ring was such a massive experience to design certain levels, we did hand off to other level designers and game designers, and I think this is what helps the company grow massively through this experience. Every game has a different set of details that need special attention, and one of them that seemed appropriate to work collaboratively or hand off to other designers was the level design in this case. And that, again, I think helps elevate the company as a whole in terms of the talent we have. Through Bloodborne and Sekiro, though Bloodborne and Sekiro are tentpole moments in the evolution of the Souls-like subgenre, Elden Ring is the most successful game, as we know. But this is pretty much this interview right here. If you guys want to type in and look for other information, you can. I'm telling you right now, there's another article where he says that he would rather wait 2 generations to make the Bloodborne remake. So now we got our full answers about why this is going on. Let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment down below. It's not really about pointing the finger. It's about realizing the truth. Because, yeah, it would be dumb to blame From Software because they don't want nobody to remake Bloodborne. It's like, oh, that makes sense. They want to get involved with it. And they want to wait till PlayStation 6. Later, y'all.